Hello everyone, massive warm welcome back to Maverick Mind. I hope we're doing really well, and as always, great to connect with you. If this is the very first time that you're joining me here, lovely to be back here. I took an impromptu break last week. That was for a few different reasons. That was because this is not to explain myself, by the way. I just wanted to reiterate the reasons because I think it might help some of you. I have had probably the most stressful month of my whole entire life. That might be an exaggeration, but it's stressful in one way, and that's for a few different reasons. For the first is I'm creating something new, and that's off the back of having to let go of something, and I'll tell you more about that very soon. I've also been trying to find a new apartment here in Barcelona, which I think in most cities you'll resonate is a bit of a minefield and a very stressful process and a very ungrounding process. And for that, I just felt like I needed a week off producing and creating content and creating things. So half of you probably would not have realized, and that's a really key point that I want to stress here, that I didn't post anything on Instagram. I didn't post a podcast. I didn't post on Substack. You probably didn't see me anywhere. Maybe one Instagram story on my personal page, and that was probably it. And firstly, I want to note that you probably did not notice that. And something that a lot of creatives think is, or when we're doing the hard things and putting our work out there, we think that if we take that break, everyone's going to forget about us. Or if we take that break, it's all going to fall down around us. And just in the noticing that you probably didn't realize that I took a break, so would most of your audience not realize when you take a break. And things will not fall down when you prioritize your own well-being and you prioritize your own creative energy. Because when we just try and push through, when we feel like we're depleted and we feel like we have no energy, in my experience, that just really leads to kind of resenting what you're putting out there and just putting things and sharing things to tick a box instead of really putting your heart and your energy behind something. And I want to stress to all creators out there that when you prioritize your own creative force, your own creative energy, and really filling that up before you start to share it out into the world, or as you start to share it out with the world, it becomes a magnet for what you really want. So when you're sharing what you want to share from a space of burnout and depletion, it likely won't get the same reactions as when you share from a space of overflowing creative force and really feeling excited and really feeling energetic about what you're putting out into the world. People notice that energy so much more. So my little week-long stress about not having a house, let that be your inspiration. Next time you're feeling depleted and feel like you're shooting all over yourself and that you should keep going, that you should keep sharing, actually just putting the foot on the ball for a moment, taking a breather and coming back when you feel more refreshed. One, most of your audience will not notice, and two, you will feel so much more excited about what you're doing. So if anyone needs that shining permission slip to take a couple of days off, here it is for you. But anyway, let's get back to this week's episode. This week I am joined by Stacey Shaller. She is the founder of Outside Minds Creative, which is a branding agency that supports ethical and climate-focused brands with bold and strategic design. Her journey actually began in the advertising world, but after experiencing quite toxic work culture, she made the empowered decision that that was not going to be her life and that she did not want that, and instead to put her creative energy into building something that she felt would make a real difference in the world. And that's exactly what she's doing. So Outside Minds is born from a deep desire to combine creativity with climate action and to show that sustainable branding does not need to look like brown paper and green leaves or all green and clean. It can actually be, and in most cases needs to be, really luxury, elevated and beautifully designed to grab the attention of buyers that maybe would be focusing elsewhere, maybe who don't immediately search for the sustainable things. So she's really redefining what eco-branding looks like and helping mission-driven businesses to stand out and not blend in. So we talk about the myths of the creative space, like being a starving artist and how you don't need to do that, what it's been like since she's launched her own business, and how to shift from burnout to balance. She shares how powerful design can become a vehicle for impact and how creatives can really step into leadership without selling out. Often, I think us as creators, we think if we are stepping into leadership, we need to be the one like standing on the soapbox, pointing our fingers and shouting the loudest, when actually that's not what leadership is. Leadership is being the walking, talking embodiment of what you stand for. And that's 100% Stacey all over. She is really the walking, talking embodiment of her speciality, which is actually regenerative agriculture. And she really focuses on kind of living in alignment with the earth and living in alignment with that kind of regenerative way of being. So when I speak about creative leadership, again, I want to stress that I'm not talking about being the loudest in terms of your voice. I'm talking about being the loudest in terms of your backbone and your energy. I'm talking about really standing with conviction in terms of what you believe, what you dream of, what you envision. And that becomes, without needing to shout the loudest, that becomes a magnet for people to follow. And by follow, I mean buy into your vision, buy into your aesthetic, your vibe, follow your music, follow your business, your brand, or whatever else you're creating. It really attracts the right people and people that are really aligned with the same values to follow along and buy into what you're creating. And as I said, that comes from being the embodiment of what you stand for rather than shouting the loudest sometimes. So yeah, this is a really great conversation. And as always, there's loads of other things we go into. But I really hope you enjoy this. And without any further ado, let's dive in, shall we? Stacey Shaller, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. Stacey, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and hear all about your story and everything you're doing through your business. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you.
Yeah, awesome. There's a lot kind of to unpack within your story and kind of where you've been and the vision that you have for where you're going. I think it's a really like nice trajectory. But to kind of give the listeners a bit of an idea of who you are, where you come from, maybe can you talk them through a little bit of kind of what brought you, maybe the first chunk of your story, what brought you to advertising to begin with?
Yeah. So I went to college, university, having no idea what I was going to do. But I knew I loved art and I knew I loved nature and animals, and I cared a lot about the environment. So I kind of started off exploring those two avenues and decided that my life would be a little bit easier in school and beyond if I studied art. It just came a little bit more naturally to me, and I really enjoyed it. But I didn't really know what kind of career I could have being an art major. And so I chatted with an advisor in my school, and she said, "Why don't you take some graphic design classes? Advertising is a growing and, a great career to have if you don't want to be a painter or a gallery artist," which I knew I didn't want that. And that's how I discovered design and advertising and knew that that was what I was going to pursue when I graduated. So I enjoyed it a lot because the artwork wasn't about me. It was about the companies that I was creating for. So it kind of took some of that personal, emotional attachment away. I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
a
I
nice
love the
point.
most about it. Mhm.
Can you remember, like, when you were younger, did you grow up in a creative house or was it something you were just always kind of drawn to? Do you remember?
Um, I was kind of the only creative person in my house. I feel like my dad has some creative energy. He's really good at writing. He would write little poems. So he had some of that, but like my mom and my sister, no one else has an artistic ability. We have some musicians like further out in my family, some cousins and extended family members that are very musical. So it's definitely in the genes
Yeah, were your
for sure.
parents like encouraging of you pursuing like the artistic path, or was it something that they kind of were maybe a bit? scared of, because I have so many people that I speak to, clients and people on this podcast, whose parents have really feared them going down that road. And then it's kind of become a narrative in their own mind later on. I'm just keen to know if that was something that you encountered.
Yes, very much. I think, wanted the best. They meant the best. And I don't know that they could see how an art degree and career would lead to a stable and lucrative career path. So I wouldn't say they were discouraging, but they were hesitant. And I'm sure that I took on some of that hesitancy, and that might have kind of turned into a bit of a lack of confidence as I got started. I never felt quite secure in my choices. So looking back on it, I would imagine that their hesitancy kind of grew in my mind as like a lack of confidence.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's
Credit.
not like their fault or even your fault. It's kind of a narrative within our whole society. It's something that we all
Mhm.
take on. And I think that we're taking on this kind of, when you take on other people's beliefs and people's words kind of fuse into your nervous system.
Right.
Words like being an artist is not a real job. How are you going to make
Yeah,
money doing that? That's a very
right.
unstable career, which is actually the truth. It is a
It is,
bit.
but it doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. You have to kind of go against your or I suppose that's not the right word to say. Embrace the thing that you're resisting the most, which is maybe taking it seriously and
Hmm.
being creating a business, or being a bit more structured about it, I suppose. Then it can be a lot more stable than people play out, especially these days with the internet and things.
Yeah.
We used to
Yeah.
have to, if you were an artist, for example, you have to wait to kind of be anointed by a gallery owner to say that your work was good enough to be on the walls. Whereas now
Right.
you can just put it on your own Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. And even when I was in school, when I went to design school, you had to get a job in an agency. Becoming your own boss or starting your own agency was not something that seemed like a possibility until much later on. So,
That's so interesting, because my dad actually had a really similar path to you. He studied graphic design and then he
oh,
went into
cool.
advertising. And he, similar to a degree, I would say, in that he was also really, really passionate about advertising. And he kind of, in so many times in my life, had ideas for starting his own agency, and it would get so far and then he would get a job in a different agency and then it would kind of be shelved for a while, and then it was like
Yes.
he started so many. But yeah, that's interesting. So how
Yeah.
was your experience like to begin with within the advertising world?
Yeah, I was very much led to believe that working for one of these big glamorous agencies with big glamorous clients was the dream. And so I pursued that. I thought that's what I wanted. And I got an internship at one of these agencies. And there were a lot of great things about it, but I also saw how unstable it is. I saw a lot of tension between agency and clients, that got messy. I saw a lot of toxic work culture. There was very much a sense of whoever spends the most time at the office is the winner,
Yeah.
and that equating to your level of passion and dedication. So people would just stay at the office, even if they weren't working. They would play ping pong and drink beer, but just being there was kind of a contest who can stay the longest and be seen as the most passionate creative. And that even back then, I just knew this is not for me. I want to have a life outside of work.
Yeah, I think like people listening, I'm sure that they'll resonate with that no matter what kind of creative industry you're in. I mean, I started in fashion and that was very much the same, especially if you're an
Yeah.
intern, actually, especially if you're the one not even getting
Yes.
paid. You had to be
Right.
there all the time. You had to
Mhm.
sell your soul. You had to be there until the wee hours in the morning and have
Yep.
zero life and just be
Yep.
grateful for that.
Yep. We slept at the office once as an intern
Wow.
group. We slept there. It was crazy.
Yeah,
But
it is kind
it's
of
like you have to
it's
prove yourself or something.
yeah. Whereas I think like when you kind of have a few years under your belt, I suppose, you realize that there are other ways to prove yourself, I suppose.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I mean, when it's when those kind of agencies, those ad agencies, or in my case, fashion houses, are so big and there's so many people. Again, you have so
Yeah.
many people's narratives, and everyone's kind of got this belief within them that, well, if I stay later, I'll look better. Therefore, I'll get the promotion. Therefore, I'll do this. Therefore, I'll do that, and
Hmm.
therefore, I'll look, I don't know, like the best creative. When actually, if you step back and peel the layers back, the best creative is the one with the best ideas, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was younger, my dad used to stay at the office for a long time. He was there really, really late. As he got older, he got very, very good at boundaries. But I suppose it was also at that time he'd earned his stripes. He's like earned awards, like D&AD awards and things like that by that time. So he
Wow.
could kind of, he could to some degree just have his own boundaries, I suppose.
Hmm.
But when you're starting out, it really is like you kind of just kind of got to go with it. And that's crazy. So how long were you there for before you kind of had that revelation of, oh, maybe this is not exactly what I wanted?
I think it was kind of always there in the background, but I was so convinced myself, but also everyone around me was so convinced that look, this is the dream. This is what you need to be doing. This is how to have a successful career in this job. So I kind of kept trying to make it work. So I went from an intern, but no one got hired at this agency. They had lost a big client and it was a mess. So I had to go out, try to find another job, and I got a job at a smaller agency, and they were a little bit less intense, but they still didn't have a lot of boundaries with clients. The work just wasn't that exciting and compelling to me. It just kind of became a job that could have been any job as far as I was concerned. And so I started to feel a little like I was misled or something by my teachers and my peers that this isn't what I was told it was going to be.
Yeah, I think I had a kind of a similar experience as
Yeah.
well in fashion. That I think you have this idea that if you're going down a creative path, once you get a job in that, you're going to be
Hmm.
creating.
Right.
When actually, I don't know about advertising, but in fashion, there's a lot of like liaising with like fabric mills or
Hmm.
factories, and there's a lot of emailing, a lot of spreadsheets, which is the thing that a lot of us avoid the most, and we're
Yes.
not really very good at.
Hmm. Yeah.
But there is a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was finding that I was always being told what to make and wasn't really given the space, or it seems like people didn't trust that I could come up with good ideas. Like you're too young, you need
Yeah.
to be told what to do. And so I was experiencing a lot of that and sort of feeling creatively stifled, but again, being kind of told by the outside world that you have to pay your dues and like this is how it is and don't expect anything ever. Have no expectations, have no boundaries. So
Yeah. Can you remember kind of the point where you sort of snapped and thought, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to chase this path instead?
yeah, it took me kind of a long time. I tried to make the advertising thing work for like the first 10 years of my career. I did freelance on and off, and I liked the freedom of that. So there was something about not having to go to an office if I didn't want to, and just having a little bit more flexibility in my schedule that I really liked. But freelancing felt like a very feast or famine, very unstable, very stressful situation. I felt like I had to just take whatever jobs people would give me and whatever amount they said they were going to pay me. I didn't feel like I had any like say or control over the work itself and who I was working with. I just had to take everything and everything because I never knew when another job was going to come. So I didn't love that, but I knew that I liked having some freedom and flexibility in my schedule. And I used that opportunity to move. So I'm originally from Minneapolis, but I moved to Chicago when I was in this freelance stage of my career. Still not convinced I could have my own business or what to do to make my career more rewarding. But after a few years in Chicago, after my last full-time corporate role, which was really, really, really toxic, that's I think that's what pushed me and kind of lit a fire under my ass to make my own decisions and start my agency. So took a while, but I got there.
Yeah, I guess that I think there's something that takes us time. There's kind of two things, I suppose. There's the like belief that you can, well,
Hmm.
many more than two. There's a belief that it will work or it kind of has to work. There's like the belief in your own talent, especially when you maybe have been fed critiques from bosses or critique from when you're at school. I don't know about your school, but my school was we were kind of hardened to
Hmm.
to be able to face the industry. And then there's also kind of like the moment of like, excuse French, but fuck it, I'm just gonna give it a shot. Anything's got to be better
Yeah.
than this, right?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly where I was at. I thought that this can't possibly get any worse if I don't. I also felt like if I don't do this and take advantage of my life right now where I have the freedom to do this, I don't have kids, I don't have a lot of responsibilities. So, like, now's my chance. And if I don't, I'll probably regret it forever. I'd rather try and fail than not try at all.
Yeah. And I guess
Yeah.
also for you and the business that you've created, you've come from like maybe not the best start, maybe not the best experiences, but then you've kind of put all of those maybe the bits that you didn't love or maybe like you weren't feeling so passionate about into something that's really purpose driven. And like you can
Right.
tell it's like really um got even a greater vision than just like making cool stuff, you know? It's
Yeah.
yeah. So would you like to tell everyone about your business?
Yeah, so my studio is called Outside Minds Creative, and one of the other things that kind of sparked a fire in me to do this was that piece about having a lot of passion for the environment and caring a lot about climate change and seeing environmental disasters all around me and wanting to do more than just compost in my house. And I had learned through my experience that design is really powerful and can really attract people to a company, a brand. And I felt like I wanted to start this agency so that I could serve clients in that space who are doing things to make an actual meaningful difference, who are going about producing products and services in an ethical and environmentally responsible way. And I saw a lot of problems in the way that companies that were purpose driven were doing it. They were getting too caught up in wanting to present themselves as sustainable, using a lot of brown papers and little green leaves and little planets. And I knew that that was not going to get them where they wanted to go. And so I saw kind of an opportunity to really help people understand that they don't need to present themselves so much so as sustainable. They can have more of a story. They can be more authentic, and people will come to them for that. And um, we need to kind of change the way we're thinking about the branding for these brands because everything's starting to look the same, and other brands are capitalizing on it and greenwashing people. And so I saw this opportunity and decided this is what my agency is going to do. I'm going to do branding for environmentally focused clients.
I love that. And yeah, there's
Yeah.
something really powerful that I want people listening to take from what you just said, because a lot of creatives kind of, we want, especially people who are listening to this, I attract a certain kind of person that's like extremely heart led and
Hmm.
very curious being,
Yep.
which is a great way to be, and it's necessary to be a successful creative to be like that. However,
Hmm.
sometimes we can get a bit caught up in our own heart and head and get around this feeling of like, oh, maybe what I'm trying to do is a bit selfish, you know?
Yeah.
Creating what I want to create is a bit self indulgent when I could be of service to other people.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas what you just said, I think, is really the mental kind of switch a lot of us need to make. And that is that great design, visionary art, and great music or great creativity has the power to really change things. It's something that people really connect with and really it can drive more change sometimes than you would think.
Yeah, definitely. I think throughout history, art has been a driver of social change and um, bringing people together or making people think differently about the world. So it is a very important and powerful thing.
It is
And
definitely, and I think it's kind of like it's kind of a subliminal form of leadership in a way. It's again something that maybe we don't really connect with ourselves as leaders because a lot of us are really introverted.
Mhm.
But actually, when you're a creative, you're kind of putting your vision out into the world. And you're kind of putting a vision of like the experiences that you've been through and what you've learned from that, and that channeling into towards change within you, which kind of mirrors within change within others, no matter what you're doing, whether it's like art or design. Um, it is like a visionary act, and that's kind of an act of leadership, whether you like it or not, everybody. So yeah, it is actually, I think we have to step away from like it being self-indulgent, and actually it's like a it can be quite a selfless thing to kind of have be this sort of channel for creating beautiful things which could go on to create change.
yeah, and even if your craft or your art's not that serious, it can still bring a lot of meaning and seriousness to someone else's life. I have artwork in my house that just makes me happy, and that's really powerful too. So you don't
Yeah, for sure.
necessarily, I think, have to be on a mission to change the world. It can just be, I just want to make people happier. I want to bring beauty into their home or into their world.
Exactly, that's definitely like a mission enough, and more than a mission enough for sure.
Yeah.
um but then kind of the second layer of what you said, I guess, also is really true and really powerful, that I think again a lot of heart-led people, especially in that era of like the whole sustainable business time, we're going for a very green and clean vibe.
Yeah.
But there is something that, you know, you kind of have to make the whole eco thing look more expensive or look a bit more well thought out or expertly designed. Like I used to own a sustainable fashion label before everyone was doing that. It was a yoga
Yeah.
clothing label, sorry. And I remember being like really, really passionate about getting very high quality branding, because I thought if I'm going to convince people to pay more for this,
Hmm.
they've got to really be sold by not only the eco thing, that kind of has to be a bonus for them. For the kind of people that are
Exactly.
going to buy that, it has to be a bonus. And they're used to
Right.
great design, they're used to really well thought out um, things that just, yeah, they look a bit cleaner, maybe is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, we know that sustainability is not the purchasing decision maker for a lot of people. So if brands are going to have a wider reach and a bigger audience and be able to thrive, they they need to speak to a wider audience and understand that not everyone is going to make a decision based on just this one factor. Like you said, it kind of has to be a bonus. And I think if we want to drive consumer demand for these things, people need to embrace other aspects of why their product is valuable to that person, whether it's high quality or it's healthier or some of these other things that we know do drive purchasing decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And it's got to, it's not, I don't really like using the word compete, because I don't like to for people to compete. I think, you
Uh-huh.
know, to know who else is within your market is a good thing, but to seeing them as competition, I don't think it's beneficial, really. It kind
Hmm.
of comes from a space of lack instead of a space of real trust in what you're doing. But anyway, that's another, maybe that's another story for another day. Um, but again, when you're doing a sustainable thing, you're not quote unquote competing with sustainable brands. You're competing
No.
with like brands that are not sustainable and everybody already knows. So you kind of have to um what's the word? Attract people
Right.
enough. um,
Yeah.
by being really cool.
Yeah. Be cool, make cool things, make a good product. I think at the end of the day, that's what people want. They want really good products. And if it
Mm,
happens to be ethical and sustainable, that's amazing. But that's not the reason that someone is necessarily going to buy your product,
yeah.
unfortunately, someday.
So for those listening, maybe there'll be people listening that are going after more of a personal brand, or some people will be creating businesses where they'll need a more of a business brand. But for
Mhm.
you and for what you do, what would you say is like the anatomy of a good brand?
I think the first thing and the most important thing is to have a story, to find something that's really unique and interesting about what you're doing. You might be doing something very similar to a lot of other people, but what is the reason that you decided to dedicate so much time and energy to this thing? That's the thing that's going to be really relatable and really captivating to people. And that's when I work with clients, that's where I start. And that's the thing that I let inspire the work. Um, it's people can tell when you're not super authentic or when things are kind of surface level. So, of course, we want everything to look really nice and to be really professional and pretty. But if that's the only reason that your branding is the way it is, or the way you're putting yourself out there, people can tell. They can
Mm.
feel a sense of surface level inauthenticity. They might not trust you completely. So taking the time to really know your story and know what makes you interesting and unique and valuable to your audience is going to be the biggest, most important thing. And then letting that drive everything else.
Yeah, for sure. I think like something that I know a lot of people struggle with is targeting the right
Hmm.
people. Because I see, especially when people are going at this alone, maybe this is like the first time that they're really putting themselves out there. Um, they kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and just hope
Hmm.
something's gonna stick. And sometimes when I
Yeah.
say to them, like, pick somebody that you're actually speaking to, like, who are you really talking to? They're like, well, that kind of feels like I'm narrowing my field. And it's like, well, you are, because you
Yeah,
speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one.
exactly.
But I think a lot of them, they kind of really struggle to kind of get the picture of who that person is. Do you have any tips for maybe how someone can go around that?
Yeah, I think I also went through this. I didn't want to niche down. I thought sustainability is enough of a niche, but I had a business coach who said, no, 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 it is not enough of a niche. Pick a thing, and you can always branch out. So keep that in mind. You can always branch out. I think it's so much easier to learn how to do that to target a smaller audience, and then you can apply it to other audiences that you're interested in. But starting out with that smaller group is going to be a lot easier because then you have something to research. You have people in that niche that you can go talk to. So I did a lot of interviews and I just reached out to people on LinkedIn. I joined different professional communities. I networked and just asked people to talk to me about the niche that I chose, which was regenerative agriculture. So very, very specific. But because it was so specific, I was able to find people that were willing to talk to me about it and help me learn more about it and learn how I can tailor my messaging and what I offer to that specific niche. And then once I learned how to do that, I could do it again for another niche and another niche. And that's kind of how I've been able to branch out a little bit from that to incorporate other areas of climate change that I was interested in.
Yeah, that's a great tip. What, I was just out of curiosity, what made you choose that area of sustainability to begin with?
Yeah, I when I was still at my job and I had decided, okay, I'm going to try to start this business. I was doing it a little bit in the background and I was looking for networking opportunities in Chicago and I saw an event for a film called Common Ground. It's a documentary about regenerative agriculture, which I had never heard of, and it sounded interesting, so I decided to go, and that film like changed the game for me. It was so powerful and it related to so many other issues. So that's what I liked about it. It doesn't just mitigate climate change, it addresses animal welfare concerns. It addresses a lot of issues in our food system. Our food system in America is really fucked up. Um, it's a mess. So, as someone who I think sees that and personally suffers from some of that, it was really exciting to me to see that there's a solution to this, and it makes a lot of sense. And I really resonated with this idea about farming in a way that tries to work and mimic nature and be in harmony with nature. I feel that a lot of our environmental issues are because we as humans have disconnected ourselves so much from nature, and that reconnecting to it and seeing it as our life-giving force rather than something that needs to be conquered is a big key in trying to solve some of these problems. And that's what regen is all about. It's all about using nature as a tool and working with it instead of against it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting actually, because I've noticed like through my own self, through many creatives that I know, creatives that I've worked with, um, that actually it's a kind of a weird mirroring or a weird thread, but
Mhm.
using our creative energy to the best to really get the most out of your creativity is kind of coming back into that rhythm of the earth that we
Mhm.
kind of have to. It's like honoring the fact that your creative cycle is kind of a season. It's honoring
Yes.
like that your energy, you kind of have to use it. And we're all different, but I think you kind of have to kind of come back into nature, find connection with nature. It brings us so much kind of peace of mind. Also, it's where all of us seem to get the most ideas when we're either
Mhm.
in nature or doing something random like laundry or
Yeah. Right.
doing very like down to earth things. It seems to put creative people, as probably everybody, but creative people in general, in the most like receptive space.
Yeah.
And honoring your body as a kind of honoring your body that it comes from nature, you know, eating well, sleeping well,
Mhm.
um, and things like that. I think like it's quite basic, but I think it's kind of the key to human fulfillment, which is kind of wild considering we've come so far from it. And now,
Yeah. Yeah. And especially, I think if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, I think there's a lot of talk about that. There's, I think, a pressure to always be working and
yeah,
to be um, always doing something to grow your business, and you feel like you can't ever take a break. But I think slow growth is the best way. And if you push and push and push, that's when you burn out really fast. And if you're doing a creative business on top of that, it's very easy to get burnt out and to just feel like you're climbing the biggest mountain ever. So, yeah, I think it's really, really important to honor how you feel in your body and let yourself be bored a little bit, take breaks. Don't try to force yourself to be creative all day, every day.
yeah. I think creative. I say this a lot, but creatives going after what they want to do on their own or building a business or whatever, we actually have to not do a lot of the advice that's put out there for business people or entrepreneurs. A lot of it we do have to do, obviously, but there's a lot also we have to kind of politely dismiss.
Right.
the you know, you should be working all it, I remember when I first started my first business, people were like, if you're not working at it till 2 a.m., then you don't want it enough. And like I'm somebody that needs sleep. so
Yeah.
so
Same.
like I was always like, no, I'm not gonna do that. But then it kind of gave me this narrative in my head of, well, maybe I'm not trying hard enough, maybe I don't want it enough, maybe I'm not
Mhm.
good enough as a, you know, designer or entrepreneur to do this. Whereas actually that's not true at all. You kind of have to go with your own rhythms and realize
Yeah.
how you work best and how, what's going
Right.
to kind of channel your creative energy into working smarter and not working all hours. Because I think a lot of us then get trapped in this uh space. I suppose similarly to those people when you're at that ad agency who would just stay there playing ping pong to look like they were working. We
Yeah.
go into the space of like just being busy for the sake of being busy to kind of feel
Mhm.
important or somehow.
Yeah, yeah, we glamorize being busy all the time and doing it all and juggling all the things. But I think, again, like sometimes I have my best ideas when I'm bored. And
Yeah.
I've tried to kind of just let myself be bored and not immediately grab something to entertain myself when I'm not working, or if I'm like stuck on an idea or I feel like I can't think of anything, I'll just go on a walk or try to just sit and not do anything, or just do something mundane like do some laundry. That I think we sort of demonize that for some reason, but there's a lot of power in it, giving your brain a
Yeah.
rest.
For
Hmm.
sure, but then again, it's like going against the grain of what we're told to do. Well, you're just supposed to sit there until it comes, but that's not how we work. That's not going to work for any of you. If you're sitting around waiting for an idea to come, it's not going to come. You have
Nope.
to, you have
Nope.
to do something else, or
Yep.
as you say, go and we'll all have different things that will kind of bring that ourself into that receptive space. And yeah, it's giving yourself permission to go against that grain and to go
Yeah.
against that hustle.
Right. And I I'm sure this is true for others, but it was definitely true for me. Part of the reason I started business is because I didn't want to work all the time. I didn't like having to get back on my computer when I left the office and answer emails on Sundays, and I wanted more balance in my life. So remember that too, that might be the reason why you started your own business, and it's worth having those boundaries with your clients or your partners, but also with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I'd love to know, and I know that is again, it's something that I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people do encounter when they start to follow their own path, go after something that they want to do and kind of live the like pirate life out there on their own.
Hmm.
Again, maybe either we get actual pushback from people around us, like friends or family, saying like you're crazy, you're not going to make it, or like the coming from a space of fear, or sometimes, and this is something really interesting and something I've noticed happening more and more, is people kind of thinking that other people think that. We think that other
Yeah.
people think they're crazy, so we don't do the thing. But then
Uh-huh.
in reality, the people around you probably be really encouraging what you're doing.
Yeah,
Is that something you
definitely.
encountered in any way?
Um, nobody nobody told me I was crazy, but I did share what you're saying about like feeling that in myself. Like I think instead of admitting to myself that that was my own voice, I thought, oh, other people are gonna think this. I also have a tendency to do the thing where I don't want to share anything until I feel like I've achieved a certain goal or I've already made it.
Yeah.
So I didn't tell a lot of people I was going to start a business for a while because I didn't feel like ready, and I didn't feel like I had made enough progress yet. But then it got to a point where I needed to leave this job, and so then I kind of had to tell people when they asked, "Well, what are you going to do?" It sort of forced me to get out of my shell a little bit. So if people are actually telling you that, you know, that it's probably their own projection. It's probably something they don't feel like they could ever do. But the most important person to believe in you is you. So if you don't believe in yourself, that's the biggest barrier. I think it's more important than anyone else believing in you is yourself.
Yeah, and for sure. I think it's a kind of a two-way projection, isn't it? Like if the doubt is coming from outside of you, like friends or family saying like you're a bit crazy, or that's going to be really hard, or X amount of businesses fail within the first year, blah blah blah, then
Yeah.
it's like they're projecting their own fear onto you, so it's not yours to carry. But then
Right.
if it's coming from you and you're like putting words in other people's mouths, then it's just a fear that you have. Like that's
Hmm.
your fear, you're just projecting onto them.
Right.
So again, it's
Yeah.
kind of like navigating. I think if you have that, like you had quite a clear vision of what you wanted to create, and like
Hmm.
um I think when we have that, it often kind of takes over the whole body of like, that's it, that's what I want to do. And then it's a pulling almost to actually do it.
Hmm.
And I really think that when we have that feeling, it's there for a reason, and you got to just kind of trust it and work to silence those voices, not silence, but
Mhm.
because whenever we have a doubt in our mind and body, there's something to learn from it. We don't have to like force it away, but it's sort of politely kind of saying to those voices within your mind and body, saying, okay, I see you, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that really helped me with those inner voices is just talking to people and finding other creative entrepreneurs and talking to them. And the more I talked to people, the more I received encouraging feedback, which helped make that voice quieter and gave me a little bit more confidence to do what I ended up doing.
Yeah, that's great advice. How did you find those other creative entrepreneurs? Were they like people that you knew, or did you join networking groups and stuff?
I joined networking groups. I started going to more networking groups. I went to a lot of design related networking groups at first. And so I met some independent designers and copywriters there. Um, I also joined, I found some Slack communities to join. If you have a creative business and a niche, I guarantee you there's a Slack community out there that's specific to what you're doing or close enough. And that's a great place to find people and to talk to people and to put yourself out there a little bit. And it's almost guaranteed you will get positive feedback.
Yeah, because it's that thing. Like I think it's like a Brene Brown quote that like nobody in the arena is ever going to tell you that not to do it. Like
No.
nobody out there like doing it themselves is ever going to tell you that you're not going to that you're not good enough or that you're not going to make it or anything like that. They're
Hmm.
just going to be the most encouraging people because they know what it's like to be in that space, and they know that even sometimes when it's really hard, and it gets really hard, but
It
it's
does.
still totally worth it to be living life on your own terms and to be like bringing your vision to life, whatever that might be in your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the reason why so many businesses often fail right away is because people quit. It's not because they had bad ideas or they made mistakes. It's because they gave up. So I always, when am I in that place where it's really hard and I'm questioning everything, that's what I try to remember is that quitting or kind of letting things get the better of my emotions is probably what's going to end up making me fail if I do. And that kind of helps encourage me to push through. And things have only been growing steadily and getting better. So there were times where I just didn't think I could do it, but you just keep going and,
Yeah.
be gentle with yourself and
Yeah, is keep going and knowing when to ask for help. I see a lot of businesses fail actually because
Mhm.
the founder doesn't ask for help, like in they don't ask people around them that they know are
Yeah.
good at certain things because they want to appear like they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Or they don't ask for coaching, things like that, or realize that you
Yeah.
can do business coaching or mindset coaching to really kind
Hmm.
of get the clarity and courage to move forwards. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but you have done business coaching, so that's awesome.
I have, yeah. I've worked with a few different coaches now, and it's great. I highly, highly recommend it if you have the ability to invest in it. It's been one of the greatest things that I've done, I think, for my business.
Yeah, for sure. To have
Yeah.
that kind of outsider, well, when it's a business coach, it's somebody that's been ahead of you on this journey. So you could like learn all those lessons yourself and take years to learn them, or just get the tips from somebody that's already lived that experience and cut down
Yep.
the time.
Yeah, it's so validating to hear when I'm, expressing things like a doubt, or I tell her, okay, I think this is what I'm going to do. And she's like, oh, this is a very common issue. I've seen this a bunch of times. I've been through this. This is what I did. I keep finding out that I'm not alone over and over and
Mhm.
over again. And that's really powerful when you kind of feel like the odds are stacked against you or you're going through those times where it feels really, really hard.
Yeah, and it can feel like the most lonely road ever as well when you're
Yeah.
doing this alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to sometimes have, I've been in like group coaching things, and it's so nice, even
Mhm.
though people are doing really different things to me, just to hear either that they're going through the same struggle that I've been through, or
Hmm.
that they're like a mother of four and they're making six figures or seven figures. It's like, okay, if they can,
Yeah.
then I can, because I don't have any of those ties, you know.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's guaranteed that there is someone else who has been through what you've been through and has gotten through it or has advice or solutions that they can offer. So asking for help is key for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Whether that's like a business issue or whether it's a mindset issue, we've all had the same. The more, that's kind of why I started this business, because I saw so many threads between the creatives that I knew or just around. We all face the same demons. We all do. We all
Yes.
have the same voices in our heads. We all have the
Mhm.
same tendencies sometimes, and for that, there's quite simple solutions sometimes, and it's just a case of
Yep.
like really turning toward that voice in your mind instead of
Mhm.
letting it lead the dance of your life,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. um I'd love to know, kind of to come to the end, as I was speaking of like business tips and things like that. With if you could go back and start your business again, is there
Mhm.
maybe one or two things that you would advise people do, or that you would do the same or different? You might do something the same.
I think if I could go back and do it again, I maybe would have done it a little bit earlier. I think I let my fear stand in my way for a long time. I'm glad I didn't do it right away because I think I learned a lot and I grew a lot and I had a lot of experience coming into it, which was really valuable. But if I could have done it a few years earlier, or if someone out there is, has a job and is afraid of leaving that job to start their dream business or pursue their own path, don't let your fear hold you back. And I think when I decided to just jump in and dedicate my full time to building it, that's when I really started to see it grow. And um, trying to do both, keep my job and start the business kind of on the side, it, I think, would have kept me from really achieving anything. It would have taken me so much longer to get where I am right now. So I think that fear of jumping in is real, but I think if I could go back, I would have done it sooner, knowing what I know now. And um, taking the leap is scary, but it helped me get where I am, and gave me the time and the space and like the mental energy to put all of that into the business, and that's when I started to really see it grow and become real.
Love that. That is such great advice. And yeah, I think a lot of people that are kind of doing their thing now would say that they would
Mhm.
start earlier. Like when my first business, I talked about it for 4 years before I actually launched it. And
Yeah.
like now, like being so far from that, I'm like, why did I do
Yeah, like
that?
I understand why I was so afraid, but now I'm like, oh, don't be afraid, just do it. It's fine. You'll be
Yeah.
great. But I do want to recognize how scary it is to leave a full-time job to pursue your own
Yeah, it is.
business. It's scary, but I think that was the best thing that I did looking
Yeah.
back. And the other best thing that I did was hire a business coach.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I would highly recommend. I wish I would have done it sooner. Um, she has been great in helping me overcome so many things, mindset issues, money mindset issues. You
Mm.
do not have to be a starving artist. I think that's another one of
No,
those
that's
things that
something
goes on.
that regular listeners of the show will probably feel their ears bleeding if I say that again, because absolutely all the time, you do not need to be broke or broken. In fact, that will stifle your creativity more than anything if you are.
Yes. Yes. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for Stacey for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'll of course leave the links to find you and everything in the show notes. But for anyone ready to search now, where can everyone find you?
okay, great. Thank you.
What's your like Instagram handle for anyone ready to search already?
It is, let me look it up because I don't remember it off the top of my head. I should go. On Instagram, you can find me at outsideminds_creative co.
Cool. Well, everyone search
And
that, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, of course. So thank
yeah,
you again so much for coming on the show.
thank you. That's great.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.